Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman live on your radio. Hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use. No doubt starts now. This, my fellow Americans, is the broadcast for May 27th in the year of our Lord 2025. This is hour 1 of 2, and the goal always to protect life, liberty, and property, to promote God, family, and country, and to do so on your radio in the traditions of our founding fathers. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, we use the blueprint for liberty, the supreme law of the land, the Constitution for the United States of America. That is our guide. And as you know, we reject revolution unless it's a Jesus revolution. Then we're in because we follow the Prince of Peace. Welcome to the show. Hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic. As you know, I've taken a couple of days off from the show due to it being the incredible Memorial Holiday weekend. A big old shout out to all those who have served our country. There is a balance, though. We want to be grateful for the service of those who have given their lives and their health and everything else for the wonderful principles that America stands for. But at the same time, you know, the military folks would be humble and say, hey, I'm not a hero, because they oftentimes go there and feel betrayed. Oftentimes we don't take care of them when they get home. Rather than just wave the flag, we need to take action in their defense. Ladies and gentlemen, that's something very, very, very critical that I wanted to highlight at the start of the broadcast today. With me, the good sheriff, Sheriff Richard Mack, the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, CSPOA.org. Become a member of the posse today. That's how you can help protect your God-given rights. Sheriff, welcome back to Liberty Roundtable Live, sir.
Hey, thank you, Sam. This miraculous Tuesday morning is beautiful Tuesday morning here in Arizona, and this beautiful, miraculous day where we're all now celebrating a great justice that was served up by the good Lord and President Trump.
Amen to that. A lot of people took part in this. We certainly played a role with our open letter to President Trump. I don't want to just get off on a big tangent where we get the credit. It isn't about credit. It's about the glory of God and about this happening. A lot of people made this happen. I don't know how many of them we ought to name because some of them may want to remain behind the scenes, but we certainly shout out to and acknowledge their involvement as well, Sheriff.
It's absolutely true. I wrote up a little something, and one of the people said, I don't need any credit. Didn't say don't put my name on there, but that would have been a good friend and good man and great leader in this country, and that would be Roger Stone. And I am going to give him a shout out.
Amen.
Whether he likes it or not, but I listed four people. First of all, you know very well that CSPOA and I were very involved in this. No one knows it better than you. And I was trying to think back when I first met with Sheriff Jenkins, and I guess I'm getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. But
yeah, so let's set the stage real quick and then let you take off on this. So, ladies and gentlemen, Sheriff Scott Jenkins, a dear friend of ours, a constitutional sheriff for sure, was really betrayed in my mind by the FBI and the Biden Justice Department and everything else. And they literally said that he took a bunch of bribes. They basically put all this big old case together. They literally railroaded him. He even took the stand in his own defense, didn't do any good. The prosecutor went belligerent and crazy. And they basically, convicted him and then said, hey, you're going to go to jail for 10 years or so. And we had talked about this and worked on this because we know Scott Jenkins, we know his character, we know who he is, we know that it's completely bogus. And so we've all been working to get him out, Roger Stone, chief among them. And Roger knows what it's like. They literally kicked in his door at 6 a.m. and had the media there. I mean, these clowns are out of control. And if anybody knows it, Roger Stone knows it, Sheriff.
Yeah, that's for absolute surety, because when he was arrested, all they would have had to have done is call his lawyer and tell him to turn himself in. Instead, the militarized FBI sends more than 24 agents and SWAT team to his home at 6 a.m., probably even a little bit earlier than that. And law enforcement does that so they know that that you're home. So they love waking people up, and I've been on those raids before, and that's a new thing that they did. Just, you don't wait for them to go to work, you don't wait for them to leave, you just want to go in and raid the home. And for them to pretend that Roger Stone was some sort of threat where they needed 26 officers to go there in the early morning, and of course they took CNN with them. And
see, and that's a telltale sign that the media is in bed with these clowns, though, and that it's a railroad from the beginning. It's politicized.
Yeah,
it was designed to make a show of force. It was all these elements mixed together in this, right?
And every single one of them know what a farce it was, because they could have just simply knocked on the door, or waited till he got up in the morning and watch him drive away. And really, that is safer for everyone. You make a traffic stop as soon as they pull out of their driveway. Then you don't have any worries about who else might be in the home, where they have guns or whatever else. And I will say again, I know Roger Stone was no threat to them. I'm just talking about such raids in general. The safest place is to get them out of their turf and just do it on the street. Maybe as soon as he exits his car somewhere, or when he's trying to get in his car, and you can tell where everything is, and it's safer for everyone that way.
And I agree, Sheriff, but let me make a point from a citizen's point of view and see what you think of this, though. I agree with what you're saying, because, hey, you don't have to worry about their house. You don't have to worry about them being laying wait. You don't have to worry about them having, a setup that you're not aware of. All those things, all those elements go away. I think you're spot on that. But with most citizens, especially just take a Sam Bushman, a Sheriff Mack, a Roger Stone, some of these people, and you go, why can't you just call them on the phone and say, listen, we have indictments against you, or we have this, or we have a warrant, or we have that. We need you to come outside and meet us on your porch.
Yeah.
Or we need you to go to McDonald's and sit down and talk with us, or whatever, a public neutral place where people aren't threatened. I'm telling you, 9 out of 10 people will go. Now, you could say, well, they could run. You could say, well, they could do this or that. I'm just telling you right now, if people knew that it was peaceful, if people knew that they would have a chance to literally have a redress of grievance and due process and all these things, I don't think most people would run or cause any trouble at all, especially a Roger Stone or a Sam Bushman or a you or somebody else. We've never been a threat in our whole lives, and we've literally been in the country for 50-plus years and monitored virtually the whole time, Sheriff.
No, you're right. That's why I say they could call his lawyer and say, we need you to bring him in. Yeah, the phone call is absolutely, or a knock on the door, just like Ruby Ridge or Waco. The sheriff could have knocked on the door of Randy Weaver. The sheriff could have and would have even suggested that he could have just knocked on the door of David Koresh. So no, this is
to prove the point, even Ammon Bundy. To prove the point, even Ammon Bundy, when he was basically in the Malheur Wildlife Refuge, literally he came out and met with the sheriff on the street exactly like you're talking about, right?
Yeah. He talked with him, and he talked with the press, and that would have been too simple. But see, the FBI has a long and sordid history of just being way overblown in their efforts and their raids and manpower and show of force. It's a show of force. If you have a show of force, then of course they're just going to submit. Without the show of force, it goes back to what we were saying. Make the phone call or knock on the door. So
anyway, the whole reason we bring this up is to highlight the de-escalation that's necessary in America. And I get that there's hardened criminals, but you can the FBI and the government can know who they are. I mean, look, the idea, for example, that Sheriff Mack,
depending on the
crime,
that's a good point. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And what was Roger Stone's crime? I think he was charged with lying to Congress, or boy, Sam, you do not want to arrest people for lying in the United States Congress. Yeah.
Because otherwise every one of them was going to jail.
Every one of them in jail. Yeah.
All right, let's get back to the topic at hand, though. We wanted to give a big old shout out and a gratitude to Roger Stone and a couple of other people as well. You had 4 people people on your list. The big story we're talking about today, and it even hit USA News at the top of the hour. It's so big. Sheriff Scott Jenkins of Virginia. It's Virginia, right?
Yes.
Got a pardon because Trump said that he's been literally abused and wronged by the Justice Department of the Biden administration, and I think it's spot on. It's hit all news sources. It's one of the biggest stories. CSPOA heavily involved. We're not trying to take exclusive credit at all, but a bunch of us patriots got together and said, hey, man, this is wrong and it's got to stop. And the President of the United States agreed. Why don't we skip the break and let's talk about your 4 people that you want to give a big shout out to who really stood up. They made a valiant stand, Sheriff.
Well, they did. And I would say for a good part of most of the day on Sunday, Sheriff Jenkins was texting me or calling me. He and his family were all together. They were praying for the miracle and crying together most of the day, saying goodbye to each other. His parents were there. His children were there. His wife was there. His brothers were there. And that's about it. He doesn't have any married children yet, so there's no grandkids. And he was just so distraught. And his comments to me were just really brainstorming. Well, what if we got this to Ed Martin, and what if we showed him that just commute the sentence, and what if we had Roger talk to him? So the main players in all of this, Sam, I'm just going to tell the truth. General Flynn, General Flynn's brother, and General Flynn's sister all got involved in
Mary Flynn, dear friend.
Yeah, And then Roger Stone. And Roger Stone had helped with another friend of yours and mine, and that was Michelle Fiore, and she got a pardon back 2 or 3 months ago.
That was okay, keep going. Yep.
And so Roger Stone, I had his number. I've met Roger before. We're friends and very friendly acquaintances. We haven't done a lot together, but we've been at events together a few times across America, and he's always.
But we all have a history of being patriots, and so we have trust for one another because we watched each other for years, though, too. We just run in a little bit different circles day to day. We're law enforcement; they're not. I'm not really. I only am in the sense that I've been working with you forever, but so we run in a little bit of different circles. The military circle is General Flynn. The political circles is Roger Stone. The or the law enforcement circles is us, and that kind of stuff. So when we say that we haven't worked with them much, it's not because we don't have trust or involvement with them. It's just that we run in different day to day, right?
Well, we worked with General Flynn quite a bit, but we hadn't with Roger Stone. And Roger Stone has. I think we've invited him to a couple of our events, but he just wasn't able to make it. And anyway, but General Flynn, as you well know, he's been to several of our events.
But you and Larry Clayman and Roger Stone have been at events in California together and everything else, though, right?
Yeah, right, of course. And so the big players to make this happen, though, were General Flynn and the 4 people that I mentioned specifically: Roger Stone, General Flynn, Ed Martin, and of course, President Trump. And we were not sure how soon this all got in front of Trump. Roger assured us that it got in front of President Trump about a month ago, really close to a month ago.
Yep.
Yeah. And rightfully so, everybody was really worried because we hadn't heard, and it was the Memorial Day weekend, and it was Sunday, and just yesterday, day before yesterday, it was all day Sunday, and it was really so emotional, Sam, for Sheriff Jenkins and his family. And he said, we're going to be here all together with my parents. They have me shipped off to Indiana, which is an 11-hour drive to prison. They're supposed to try to make it to where you're closer to home so relatives can come and visit you. with relative easiness. It's supposed to be conducive to visits. And they literally were shipping him off to someplace 11 hours away. So, and there was a facility 3 hours away, which would have been really
and
nice.
this would be Pam Bondi in charge of that exercise, right?
Yeah, ultimately she's in charge. I'm sure she doesn't know too much about it, but she could tell the Federal Bureau of Prisons, why couldn't you get this man set up a little bit better than this? Why are we still kicking this man and his family? She could have said that very easily, but I doubt very seriously, with all that she's got going on, that this ever got in front of her. I'd be surprised if it had. But at the same token, Ed Martin works for the DOJ, and he's kind of in charge of looking at pardons. And so I would think that some of the comments by President Trump were actually penned by Ed Martin. And so I know that he, Ed Martin, and Roger Stone had several meetings about this. But most importantly, Sam, I really want to emphasize this. Sheriff Jenkins is a very religious man. He constantly talks about prayer and how his family knelt in prayer. And this was happening throughout the day, Sunday. And again, he was texting me, he was calling me. And one thing that really touched me that he said to me is, my wife just wants you to know you're a part of our family forever. And it was because of the effort that I put into this. And he didn't have to ask me. I volunteered. Sam, and I want everyone else to know, anybody who knows me knows that this is part of my DNA. I absolutely hate and loathe innocent people going to prison. And I don't care who you are, and I don't care what color you are.
Or what politics you have either.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I got so involved in this, because I know this man. I've worked quite a bit with this man. What he has done to stand for the Second Amendment and for the Constitution. Just to reiterate this, he was elected in 2012. We formed the CSPOA just about 8 or 9 months before he got elected in 2011. In 2012, he called me and he said, I want you to come here and train my entire office. Every single employee will be required to come to this training. And I want you to come and train them in the Constitution for Law Enforcement class, which I did. And we had a morning session for 3 hours and an afternoon session for 3 hours, so everybody could attend who's on swing shifts and graveyard shifts and all that. So everybody could get there because law enforcement works 24/7. And of course, within that, you have 3 different shifts. And so they did, and everybody attended. Secretaries, dispatchers, jailers, didn't matter. Everybody was required to attend. That's how dedicated this man is to the cause of liberty and to the Constitution.
And let's be clear before you go on about our training, though. Our training is constitutional training relating to law enforcement, about due process, about checks and balances, about the Constitution, about one's oath of office. It's very unique training. Nobody else has training like we do, Sheriff. Let's be clear about that. So when he asks for the CSPOA to come in and train all of his people, it's because that training is not available anywhere else. It's elite training for those who are in special positions of trust and authority in America today. Trust because we elected them. Authority because we gave them this power to say, you will stand for the citizen. You will interpose. You will use due process, and you will use your oath of office to make sure that innocence is rewarded and protected. I mean, that's really the key to our training, de-escalation, all these different things that nobody else really focuses on, right?
Well, and the key component, too, of our training is our Supreme Court case. I mean, it was a case done by sheriffs for sheriffs. And I was going to tell you, and you know this too, you've been to her training. Chris Ann Hall does excellent constitutional training for anyone, for law enforcement, for teachers, doctors, whoever. I don't care who you are. She needs to really do it for lawyers and prosecutors, but they never ask her. But she does not talk about our Supreme Court case. And I'm not sure I know why, but I've even asked her once, and she never responded. But the point is, she provides a lot of powerful history and constitutional training and founding fathers, very similar to ours, but it's still different, a little bit different. And of course, the best training is Chris Ann Hall and Sheriff Mack together. But this is all aimed at the oath of office and the fundamental responsibility we have in law enforcement to uphold and defend the Constitution. Our Supreme Court case backs that up extensively. And Scalia's decision is absolutely another miracle that, yes, we share with law enforcement, because the sheriffs of this country actually will say, we have a moral and lawful responsibility to enforce Supreme Court cases. I don't totally 100% agree with that, because if the Supreme Court is wrong, we have to stand against it. Liberty comes first. Liberty is first at every facet of government.
And the supreme law comes first as well, Sheriff. And when things conflict with that supreme law, those conflictions become the problem, not the supreme law or the obedience there, too.
Of course. Absolutely. So Scott Jenkins was totally on board with this, with making sure that they're following the Constitution. And at one point, I talked about, do you have administrative checkpoints and DUI checkpoints in your state? He said, yes. And I said, they're not constitutional. Even though the Supreme Court has said you can do a DUI checkpoint, stopping people or every person or every third person, which the Supreme Court has tried to dissect, which is so stupid, but they have endorsed DUI checkpoints and whatnot, where you require everybody to stop. And there is no probable cause. You just make everybody stop and show their papers. Like Nazi Germany, let me see your papers, comrade. And so I couldn't get that. And he goes, yes, that's what we do. We do that. And I said, there's one way to make it constitutional. And he said, tell me. And this is in the class. And I said, they must be voluntary, and you must post it that it's voluntary. At lunch, he went back to his office. Of course, we're right there at his office, but he went in his office and he changed that policy and procedure right then and there to be voluntary.
And let me explain, ladies and gentlemen, this. These sheriffs are heroes, from Richard Mack going all to the Supreme Court to Sheriff Scott Jenkins changing that policy right on the spot. These people are constitutional heroes that got elected by their citizens. And I want to bring this up. This is really important for people to understand. Your Second Amendment is under assault. And whether it be the Sheriff Mack thing, and they talk about the Brady Bill, or sheriffs will comply with the President of the United States or whatever, back in the day, in 1997, that was won by Sheriff Mack. Bill Clinton lost. But now Sheriff Jenkins, the real issue, though, at the core of this is the Second Amendment. Fascinatingly enough, 25 plus years later, the Second Amendment at the heart of Scott Jenkins' case. Because they say he took bribes and everything else, but really he's a Second Amendment sheriff. And that drives these thugs, these liberals, these ones who don't believe in the rule of law and checks and balances, absolutely insane. They lose their minds. And that's really the problem. I want to get back to that, talk about Scott Jenkins. Then I want to talk more about the FBI, because thank heavens we endorsed Cash Patel and some good things are happening there. We got it all for you on your radio, ladies and gentlemen. The Good Sheriff with me, CSPOA.org. Sheriff Richard Mack continues in seconds on Liberty Roundtable Live.
Protecting your liberties. You're listening to Liberty News Radio.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Rich Thomason. President Trump says he wouldn't be surprised if his big, beautiful bill approved by the House looks a bit different by the time the Senate gets through with it.
I think they're going to have changes. Some will be minor and some will be, fairly significant. But we've been working with the House all the way up. They've been working together.
House Speaker Mike Johnson cautioned senators not to meddle too much with the bill, given how challenging it was to get it through the House. The FBI taking a second look at some high-profile cases.
Cases include the cocaine found at the White House during the Biden administration, the leaking of the Supreme Court Dobbs case that overturned Roe v. Wade, and the pipe bombs found before the January 6th incident. In a post on X Monday, Deputy Director Dan Bongino said they've made the decision to either reopen or push additional resources and investigative attention to the cases. He said he receives briefings on the cases weekly, and they are making progress. Tasha Stevens reporting.
National Public Radio and several local stations taking President Trump to court, arguing an executive order ending NPR and PBS federal funding is illegal in violation of the First Amendment. It's why authorities always urge you to look before you lock, especially in the hot weather. A 1-year-old New Mexico boy is dead after being mistakenly left in a caregiver's vehicle for a few hours.
Obviously, being in a hot truck with windows up can get extremely hot and after just a little bit of time. So, it's just really, really sad that that this happened.
The Albuquerque Police Department's Gilbert Gallegos. More than 24 people injured. A man plowed a minivan into a crowd in Liverpool, England. Watching Wall Street this morning, the Dow trading 407 points higher. The Nasdaq Composite Index is up 317. The S&P better by 76 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
Hi, I'm Chuck McDowell, the timeshare cancellation guy and founder of Wesley Financial Group, and I want to set the record straight. I am not an attorney. I've never wanted to be an attorney, and the truth is I really don't even like attorneys. If I sound like an attorney, I'll apologize. But what I've learned in my 15 years in the timeshare cancellation business is you don't need to be an attorney to get folks out of their timeshare. At Wesley, we've helped over 40,000 families cancel their timeshare, and I want to share with you how we do it. Just give my office a call. I guarantee if we take you as a client, we'll get you out of your timeshare, or you'll pay nothing. Attorneys, this was meant to be funny, so please don't sue me, especially my friend Kenneth from Black River Falls, Wisconsin.
Call now for your free timeshare exit info kit. 800-613-5454. 800-613-5454. 800-613-5454.
Former Sheriff Richard Mack recounts in his book The Proper Role of Law Enforcement how he came to realize while working as a beat cop how wrong the all-too-common orientation of police officers is when they think of their job as being to write tickets and arrest people. Richard Mack tells of his personal transformation from by-the-number cop to Constitution-conscious defender of citizen safety and freedoms. Learn what it really means to serve and protect. Purchase your copy at CSPOA.org. That's CSPOA.org.
Do you know what is great about America? Ask an Immigrant. Ask an Immigrant is a new podcast dedicated to helping Americans, especially our youth, value, appreciate, and be grateful for the freedoms we have here in America. Join host Lydia Wallace-Nuttall as she interviews immigrants from around the world to discover their inspiring personal stories about why they came to America. To learn more about why America is the most prosperous, greatest country in the world, download the Loving Liberty app or go to lovingliberty.net.
As the United States boldly stepped forward in the glorious light provided by its new Constitution in 1787, the nations of the earth were in awe of the newfound strength and hope of this free land. Today, the nation stands at a crossroads. A divergence from the original intent put forth in the United States Constitution has brought grave threats to our beloved nation. A miracle is needed if the United States is to survive. That miracle is again the pure application of the United States Constitution. I'm Scott Bradley. In my To Preserve the Nation book and lecture series, I bring forth truths that will help raise up a new generation of statesmen like those noble Americans who founded this land. Vigorous application of these principles will invigorate and restore the nation, and we may become again the freest, most prosperous, most respected, and happiest nation on earth. Visit topreservethenation.com to begin that restoration.
Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman live on your radio. The good sheriff, Sheriff Richard Mack with me. The Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, CSPOA.org. I have never seen this in my entire life, Sheriff Mack, and I got to just take a side note for this. You know, I put stories together that I think are critical, and I look through literally dozens and dozens of news places and organizations and everything else, and I put the stories together for the show. I have never seen this before in my 30 years of broadcasting. We carry two news services on the radio network, Liberty News Radio, Loving Liberty Radio Network, so we carry USA Radio News at the top and Salem Radio News at the bottom. I've never heard in my entire life the top and the bottom of the hour carrying the same stories to a T that I have on my list. We are seeing a change as the new media takes center stage. We are seeing an alignment of constitutional and conservative values like we've never seen before. And the pardon of Sheriff Scott Jenkins, constitutional sheriff, is one of them. That was at the top of the hour. The bottom of the hour is the FBI stories about Dan Bongino and Cash Patel and others that we're going to be talking about here in a couple of minutes. I've never seen that in 30 years of broadcasting, that two different news services, mainstream news services at the top and bottom of the hour, have the same stories as we have. Now, they don't have the same details that I have and stuff like that because we've got our own experiences and our own commentary to put to the mix. But it's just incredible, Sheriff.
Yeah, it is. You're right. And it's, I have to give President Trump a lot of credit for it because, obviously the first thing he did was get rid of the communist Kamala Harris. If he hadn't done that, Sam, you and I would be talking about a much different America today. And
would be probably talking about it from prison, Sheriff.
Yeah, and that's very likely and very possible because of what she was promising and her record. Her whole thing, Sam, just is based on communism. Let's look at this. She was going to put price freezes on and just tell every business you can't charge more than that. And it would have had and Sam, that's one of the most innocuous things she was trying to do. She is this little communist dictator that was just going to start forcing people to run their lives and run their businesses how she said. And that was just a small example. And so all of this would have been based on the right to peaceably assemble, which she doesn't agree with that. Violence from the left, she totally supported that. That's another commie tenet. And so, yeah, Sam, in so many different ways, people don't really realize how President Trump saved America and opened a window for us to get through, to get back to the Constitution. And there is a new awakening about the Constitution now.
And we love it, and we're working towards it. So Sheriff Scott Jenkins gets a pardon. Thank heavens, because I believe he's an honorable constitutional man, but he's also a godly man. And you kind of mentioned that before, Sheriff. And you mentioned four names. You mentioned, Roger Stone. You mentioned General Flynn. You mentioned Donald Trump. And these people, that they've made a tremendous difference here. You deserve a lot of credit. Your name should be in there too. I know you don't give credit to yourself. People like me and others behind the scenes have kind of helped a bit too. There's a lot of us really in the mix to make this happen, but we really want to throw the miracle to God. And that's what Scott Jenkins led the way doing as he found out about this pardon on Sunday. He's like, hey, you know what? God Almighty is the key to all this. And I think he's spot on that, Sheriff.
Yes. And, Sheriff Jenkins was telling me the entire day on Sunday when his family all got together. And I didn't think he was this young, but maybe it is. One of the articles said that he's 53. I thought he was 62, but I might be thinking of somebody else. But 53, man, that's young. He actually started in law enforcement when he was 18. So he's had about 34 years in law enforcement experience, and a stellar record.
He's been a sheriff 12 of those years, right?
12 of those years was sheriff, yes. And this cost him his re-election, obviously. When you're under federal indictment, it's really hard to get past the election process. But, Sam, there was one other thing, too, that President Trump saved here. If you go to prison and you've been convicted of felonies, which he had, you don't get your retirement. And something he worked for 34 years was going to be taken away from him and his wife. His wife was to get nothing. And they would be completely subject to friends and family for their subsistence. And so this was really, Sam, from every aspect of them putting him 11 hours away in Indiana, away from his home, away from family, and to make sure everybody wants to go visit him would be a 3-day trip. 11 hours there, spend a couple of hours with him, and then 11 hours home. And that kind of cruelty and bullying and piling on is just so typical of the federal government. And this whole thing, Trump called it exactly correct. Putting his family through hell. And I don't care what the prosecutor or the judge or anybody else has to say about this case. There is no way someone goes to prison for 10 years, which most murderers don't even get, on a charge like this. And let's be real clear here. They even said in these articles, Sam, about him, that these people paid for a position that has no authority whatsoever. So how is that a bribe? It's an honorary position because they made a donation. So let's say he offered nothing in return for the donation, which no politician in Washington, D.C. ever does. They always give something in return. And some businesses, especially Big Pharma will donate both to the Democrat and the Republican in the same damn race, in the same campaign.
Amen. And to prove your point, I mean, if you're going to say this, what about Elon Musk donating, big money to the Trump campaign, and then, hey, he leads up Doge. Now, I'm not saying that there's a problem there. I'm saying, if you want quintessential examples, there they are.
There's one. And then who normally gets a big position in the cabinet or a big position as an ambassador somewhere? Those are all big donors, and those are official positions with lots of power and authority.
And a lot of times it's not only donors, but it's people who ran against them, their opponents in a given race. And then eventually, for example, they get positions as well. And it's to align like-minded people. Just take Ben Carson, for example, to make the point. He ran against Trump in the 2016 presidential campaign, but then he became part of Trump's cabinet, right? So that's commonly done. This is beyond discussion.
Right. And so the only difference is with Sheriff Jenkins' positions, they were honorary. They carried no authority. And they even said that in the article. Like, you're supposed to get, what's the purpose of a bribe if they can't do anything for you? And they couldn't, and they didn't. And so, wow, he did nothing that even qualified as a bribe, because these people couldn't do anything for him except donate to his campaign, which is not illegal. And so if he would have given them like a big position like under sheriff or chief deputy or something like that, but even then it's still not illegal. It's not an illegal donation because it happens every day in Washington, D.C. And if these prosecutors in Virginia want to go after real crooks, then go start in Congress and work your way around to the White House and arrest every one of them. Because you're nothing but a liar when you say what Jenkins did was criminal, but what happens every day in Washington, D.C. is not. That's a joke.
It is, and the prosecutor went crazy on Scott Jenkins as well. It's kind of like how Bill Clinton went on you. This Second Amendment thread cannot be ignored here. Both of you, or the two of you, are constitutional Second Amendment sheriffs. You believe in the right to keep and bear arms, and that right shall not be infringed. And at the core of that, they went after you to the point where the president even said, "Hey, sheriff, I'll arrest you if you don't sit down and shut up." To then the threats against Scott Jenkins by the prosecutor. He was out of line about this. The news articles doubled down and explained that too.
Yeah, no kidding. And so they talk about this, I believe it's the prosecutor, her last name of Lee. After he was caught, he sought to manipulate the judicial process and to evade responsibility for his crimes by lying to the court and the jury, Lee added. That's the prosecutor talking, Lee. And he said that Jenkins violated his oath. Mr. Lee, please show us where you have come out publicly and in your cases gone after people who have refused to keep their oath of office. Why don't you prosecute somebody who actually refused to keep their oath or for perjury? How many times have you stood for the Second Amendment, sir, which is an integral part of our Constitution within the Bill of Rights, the supreme of the supreme law of the land? When have you ever done anything except go after an honorable sheriff? When you went to his member, you did, Mr. Lee, you went to a member of the search and rescue squad who was facing life in prison for tax evasion. You went and got him and asked him to go after and set up Sheriff Jenkins. Tell me that's not a bribe. Promising him less time in prison or to get out of prison entirely so you could go after a guy who appointed somebody to be in an auxiliary position that carries no authority whatsoever. It's an honorary position, sir. He did nothing wrong, and you know it, and you basically admitted it in your stupid quotes in the article. Yeah.
Well, then it gets
Mr.
worse,
Lee.
Sheriff. It gets worse because then they basically they say, 3 people pled guilty ahead of time. And 2 of the 3 are FBI undercover thugs, provocateurs. Every time we find a patriot in trouble, there's some FBI thug behind it. Every single time. And this is no different. 2 FBI agents were at the heart of this undercover and supposedly pled guilty and blew the whistle. So are those guys going to prison?
No, of course not.
What?
No.
Why?
And you see what happened is they stacked all these ridiculous charges, about 15 different charges. And that's what they do, Sam, so that they can coerce you into accepting their wonderful plea bargain. And because he didn't, then the prosecution went after him full bore. The judge threw the book at him, making them waste their time, all this time in court. And, of course, the judge not allowing exculpatory evidence that Jenkins wanted to present. And it was just a kangaroo court with a kangaroo stupid prosecutor that is so arrogant and ignorant. And I'd like to ask Lee what form of government we have in America. I bet he couldn't even tell us that. But he wants to go after this guy and say,
I'd like to ask Lee this question. When President Bill Clinton said he'd throw you in jail, and then it turned out that you won at the Supreme Court and Bill Clinton lost, what part of belligerent force would that be under? I don't think the president kept his oath of office. He got shut down by the sheriff and shut down by the Supreme Court. Is he going to go after Bill Clinton and toss Bill in the clink?
Well, yeah, I wanted to ask him, have you ever read the Prince decision, sir, in which I was the primary litigant? Let me ask you, Mr. Lee, a Supreme Court case done by sheriffs. Are you familiar with it? No, he won't be. And even if he were, he has never done anything to make sure that FBI enforces it. Yeah. What a joke. Yeah,
Anyway,
I really
can tell
want
you
to
this.
I'm going to do an article in a local paper in Virginia about that idiot prosecutor.
Give it to me. We'll turn it into a national press release as well. I want to give a big old shout out to General Flynn, a big old shout out to Roger Stone, a big old shout out to Ed, a big old shout out to all these people that have participated, to Sheriff Mack, all these people who made this happen. You mentioned Scott Jenkins doesn't have any grandchildren yet. but he will.
Yeah.
And because of the efforts of everyone, including President Trump and God Almighty, he's going to get to spend time with his grandkids, isn't he?
Yes, he is, and quite miraculously so. And Sam, he was torn all day Sunday between holding hands with his family and crying and kneeling in prayer with them. And it just went back and forth, and he would text me something else where he was brainstorming how they could do something, and then I forwarded one of those to Roger Stone, and Roger Stone said, "Believe me, Sheriff, I'm doing everything humanly possible." And I said, "I know." He's just so distraught, being at home with all his family, and they're all talking about this and so emotional. And of course, Roger understood, and Roger kept fighting all day Sunday to make sure something happened. And sure enough, in the evening on Sunday, President Trump called him and gave him the news, and then the celebration started and the news started breaking. And he said, President Trump told Sheriff Jenkins, "Give me 24 hours and I'll have this out." And then it actually came out about 12 hours later. So Trump was good at his word. He stayed ahead of that. And that's when I called you on Sunday to let you know it was going to happen. And sure enough, all day yesterday, it got announced all over the place. And we're just thrilled with this, Sam, because as I was talking earlier, I really feel like Benjamin Franklin. I would rather 100 guilty men go free than one innocent man be put in prison.
And
that's how,
ladies and gentlemen, is quintessentially what this is all about, right?
Yes. I cannot ever, with anyone, ever justify putting an innocent man in prison. I would never support it. I've never participated in such, even though I've been accused of something just like that in Utah recently. And it's absolutely not true. I would never do that, and I never have. And so I could not live with myself if I ever had anything to do with putting an innocent, even if it was accidentally, and I really believed that this man was guilty, and then I found out I was wrong. I would move heaven and earth to get that man out of jail. I even did it, Sam, in traffic court. If there was even an inkling that I was wrong in writing that ticket, I would say so in court. And one time I even went to the city attorney. I said, "Hey, you know what? I don't feel good about this ticket, and I'm sorry, but I think you just need to dismiss it." And the prosecutor shook my hand and said, "Good job. Thank you for your integrity." You know, no one got after me for doing stuff like that. You didn't get in trouble. That was me with my God next to me. And I said, I'm not going to do that. If I'm not 100% certain, I'm not going to charge this guy $200. I'm not going to have him pay for something he didn't do. Even though I may have been right, there was just a couple of things I didn't feel comfortable with. And so I changed it.
Yeah, there's a difference between being factually correct and morally right.
Yeah, there is. And so, Sam, Sheriff Jenkins is a good man. And the person that I wanted to make sure everyone knew that he thanked the good Lord. As soon as he got off the phone with President Trump, his family gathered for a gratitude prayer. And what they had been through just on that day was the living hell that President Trump referred to. But Sam, this has been for the last year and a half that this family has gone through this. And so when I started working with him was about 6 months ago, and I had a trip. I think I was in Pennsylvania. And then I said, I called Sheriff Jenkins and I said, I'm going to swing by the Richmond airport. I want you to meet me there, and I want to discuss how we're going to help you. And I gave him a copy. I guess it's a copy. But I gave him one of our CSPOA posse badges with a wallet. And I said, I know you've seen this before. You may not have remembered it, but I had it at our table when you spoke at our event in Lynchburg, Virginia at Liberty University. And so maybe this is where you got the idea, but I would testify that indeed, I've been doing this for years. And it's a fundraiser for us, Sam. And it is very authentic badge, a very authentic wallet. But I've said all along, it bestows no authority on you. Now, if you get on your posse with your sheriff, that has a little bit of authority with it. You're part of the posse. And the attorney, Lee, was also very indignant that they were sworn in, saying, oh no, they're sworn in. Like that really matters? No one even pays any attention to the oath of office, and that's what you take. You swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution.
And that's why our training is so important at the CSPOA, ladies and gentlemen, because we break that down and help sheriffs and help law enforcement and help any public official understand what they've committed to and what their obligations and their carrying out of their duties are regarding to that and more. Really quick before the end of the hour, so a big shout out to President Trump. Thank you so much. All those who helped, thank you too. You're not unnoticed. Some of you aren't being mentioned intentionally because we don't know if we have permission to mention their names, but a big shout out to Roger Stone, to Michael Flynn, or General Flynn, General Flynn's sister Mary Flynn, and others, Sheriff Richard Mack, Scott Jenkins. Great work, everyone. Hopefully, we all had a little part in that. But you know what it reminds me of? When we had our dear friend in Florida defend the Second Amendment, and this is the thread that really is. Every sheriff that stands for the Second Amendment seems to have trouble here that you got to battle through. But we were fearful we were going to lose that case, but it was Liberty in Liberty County, Florida, back in the day when it went to the court there, and he won, and we had Liberty. And now Liberty is for the whole nation with Sheriff Scott Jenkins. We have a few other people we need to work on pardoning and a few other things to work on, but man, we're getting off to a great start. But Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, and we endorse Kash Patel, they're literally starting to revisit a bunch of cases, Sheriff. One of them is the Oklahoma City bombing. You know how the pipe bomb was there the day before? They're digging into that. There's a big $500,000 cash reward, but they're going to dig in to get to the bottom of that one. That's really critical as well.
Exactly. What happened to John Doe number 2? That he was his photograph or his what do they call it? Sketch. His sketch face was plastered all over the world. And then all of a sudden they didn't want him anymore, and he just disappeared. No, there's
that's
stuff
true in the Oklahoma City bombing too. There was a John Doe number 2 that disappeared. This is a pattern too.
Yeah, it is. So no, I am so grateful for this, Sam, and I am really livid with this Lee prosecutor.
They're also going to get to the bottom of who had the cocaine in the White House, they say.
I love that one, Sam. It's not
Do you think that who's it going to be? Is it going to be Hunter? Is it going to be the daughter? Is it going to be Jill? Is it going to be Joe? Who had the cocaine in the White House, you think, Sheriff?
Yeah, they know who had it. They know. And the likelihood is that obviously it was Hunter. But they know.
Or it could have been the daughter, though. She's just as, who knows? Yeah. But there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We, all I'm telling you is we're taking a lap of victory with the president on this one, Sheriff.
Yes. Absolutely.
All right, we know you got to travel. It's your 50th year anniversary celebration. 50 years of marriage for the good sheriff and his lovely wife, Dawn. A shout out to you guys. Have some fun. We'll chat soon, my friend.
Thank you, Sam. See you soon, my friend.
Sheriff Richard Mack, everybody. CSPOA.org. Become a member of the posse today, will you please? Solutions are on your radio. Liberty Roundtable Live, yours truly at the heart of it all, doing the very best we can to tell the tale of truth, because this is Liberty Roundtable Live, syndicated by Loving Liberty Radio Networks, lovingliberty.net. Spread the word, share the love, and God save our republic.